So, Gerald, I mean, the mood music coming out of both Number 10 and Cameron and across the pond has been saying to Israel, oh, you know, be careful. You're being tough is sometimes turning the other cheek. And Israel saying, well, look, come on. If you had been a country with 300-odd warheads about to rain down on you, would you want to turn the other cheek? But it is interesting that actually Iran has turned around and said, well, if Israel so much as lifts one finger in retaliation, which according to David Cameron, they are going to do, that they're going to magic up a weapon, the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. Now, if you were Cameron, what would you be saying?
Well, good afternoon, Kevin and Alex. If I could just say, Kevin, I entirely agree with everything you said about the previous conversation. It's the responsibility of parents to bring up their children, not the state.
I knew you'd agree.
And parents should decide on these matters. I got chased around with my mother with the stair brush, and by the time I could outrun her, that's when she could no longer beat me up, and I got caned at school, and frankly it hasn't done me any harm. However, that's by the by, but to address the point...
Me too, Joe. I went through all that as well.
Talking about physical punishment, should Israel be deploying the same sort of mentality against Iran?
Yes, I think the Mad Mullahs could do with a bit of the stair brush, personally. But it might need something rather more drastic than the stair brush. The fact is that Iran has pursued a war against Israel, which they wish to drive into the Mediterranean Sea. That is their policy for the last 30 years. And they have done it through proxies, through Hezbollah in Lebanon, through Hamas in Gaza, and through the Houthis in Yemen. And they paid them something like £16 billion over the last 15 years to attack the Israelis on their behalf. So what the Israelis did, it would appear that they attacked that consulate and took out the senior military commanders in Damascus. Maybe it was done in order to specifically to provoke Iran. And Iran, as you rightly say, launched a massive attack upon Israel, in excess of 300 missiles, including 30 large cruise missiles, which could have killed a lot of people and done a huge amount of damage. But only thanks to the air defenses which Israel has, and the immediate spontaneous support of its principal allies, Britain, the United States, and France and Jordan, came to their assistance. And I think that it does behove the Israelis to think about the views of their allies, because we did come to their support. They have not come to the support of Ukraine, as we requested that they should do. And interestingly, Ben Wallace, the former Secretary of State for Defense, said in the Telegraph yesterday, he said that in his experience, the only way to deal with a bully is to smack them hard. And I share that view. However, I do think the Israelis got to think very, very carefully about how they respond to what happened on Saturday night. There is a very real risk this could escalate, and that would not just draw in Israel. It would draw in Israel's allies and friends as well as the wider Arab world. So they have got to think very carefully. If they can come up with a strike which indicates the extent to which they can defeat Iran, because let us face it, Iran's attack on Israel was a complete, utter failure on Saturday. Over 300 weapons, and only about 5 actually got through. So it was a gross failure. But if Israel can devise with their sophisticated precision weapons a response, then I think that would work. But they have got to be very, very careful indeed. And they cannot just ignore their friends, because they do rely upon their friends. And Netanyahu faces quite a lot of opposition at home. Some say that had he been more awake on the watch, the initial attack by Hamas, the brutal murder of so many Israelis, would not have happened if their intelligence had been more up to speed. Sorry to interrupt,
Gerald. I just want to ask you something. I think it was always fanciful for various world leaders, including ours, to say, "Oh, don't respond, Israel. Show restraint." How would they like it if 300 missiles poured down on London or Paris or Washington. Of course they'd respond. Of course Israel was always going to respond. But what I'd like to ask you is, what do you think the nature of that retaliation will be? Because I think the wise thing would be to look into Iran's nuclear capabilities, their nuclear projects, and attack that.
Well, I think that's a very interesting idea. I think it would be extremely provocative, because what we do know is that Iran is doing all it can to develop nuclear weapons. There was a plan which was undertaken by the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, that is to say, United Kingdom, United States, France, Russia, and China. It's called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which was drawn up in 2015. And under that, there was a kind of arrangement under which Iran would be given better access to the civilized world on the condition that they did not use their uranium in order to facilitate the building of nuclear weapons. Donald Trump, in my view, entirely correctly withdrew the United States from that agreement. I think it was fanciful from the outset. But as I repeat my point, I think they've got to be, the Israelis have got to be very careful. And that's why you haven't seen any retaliation as yet, because they are really trying to work out how they can do it, how they can do some kind of precision strike, which will not result in Iran trying further aggression directly on Israel rather than through its proxies. Very, very difficult for them. We have to be supportive of Israel. But if I just add this one point, I think the Israelis should stop occupying other people's land. The West Bank is not part of Israel, and the behavior of the settlers has done nothing to assist Israel's
there
cause.
There is so many complicated things going on in the Middle East. Well, let's all hope and pray that Iran isn't a week away from creating a nuclear warhead and it all kicks off.